one of the greatest action movies ever made, Terminator 2. Today we're going to talk about the background. I'm going to talk about the cast. We'll talk about filming the movie. I'll talk about the music, which is an interesting soundtrack, and the musical score is really good. And then I'll tell you about some of my favorite scenes in this movie. I remember seeing this movie in the theater. It was amazing. It was awesome with all the great action sequences. There were some CGI things that were brand new that nobody had ever seen before that they used in this movie. And it just made it incredible. I love the first Terminator movie. It was more of an action thriller. This one had a little bit more heart to it because then you see Arnold as the bad guy in the first one and he's the good guy in this one. So it's kind of a swap. But it's really cool, really fun. The one other note about this movie is I saw it with my friend Tim, and he hadn't seen the first one. And so during the movie, he was asking me all kinds of questions. So part of the movie, when we were in the theater, I was having to say, Tim, shush, shut up. I'll answer it later. I'll tell you about it later. Just watch the movie. So fun memories. Be sure to tell me what your memories of seeing this movie are. What are your favorite scenes? What do you like most about this movie? What do you think about the rest of the Terminator franchise? I personally thought it took a dip after this one. The first two are my favorite, and then I didn't think the third one and some of the rest of the Terminator movies have been that great. But what are your thoughts on those? Anyway, let's get started with the background for this film. As I said in my last video, the Terminator was a massive unexpected hit. It earned $78.4 million on a $6.4 million budget, which is incredible. Almost everyone, including Arnold Schwarzenegger, was looking for a sequel. But James Cameron thought that he told the whole complete story in his first Terminator movie, and he really didn't want to do a sequel. He wanted to work on Aliens, which is an incredible sci-fi movie, and then The Abyss, which is also an amazing sci-fi movie. Let me know if you want me to do either one of those two movies. They're both fantastic. The studio situation was also kind of weird. Basically, James Cameron, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Heard, and also special effects artist Stan Winston were suing the film corporation for unpaid profits from the Terminator. Go figure. Oh my gosh. So because of that turmoil and because they were suing the company, the company was experiencing all kinds of financial difficulties, and so they sold the rights to Carlico Pictures. And Carlico Pictures is the company that created Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger, which is another great sci-fi movie. So you get 3 sci-fi movie mentions and just a few moments on Robert Wright's Gen X pop culture. Tell me if you wanted me to do Total Recall, the one with Arnold. That's a great movie. I have it. It's fantastic. I love it. Basically, what happened is they sold the rights to this company. This company wanted to make the Terminator 2 movie, but they had a little bit of trouble financing it, and they had to bring on other partners and other small studios to help them out. Cameron was actually brought back. They convinced him to come back and paid him $6 million to write the script, and they had a deadline to get the movie out by Memorial Day 1991. Cameron had 6 weeks to write the film and use some of his original concept. Now remember, in the first Terminator movie, I described the original concept was 2 Terminators and one of them was liquid metal, but they couldn't do it at the time because they didn't have the technology. Well, guess what? Especially with his special effects in the movie The Abyss, they had the technology to do the liquid metal Terminator. So Cameron brought that idea back for part 2, which I thought was a brilliant idea. The other thing that he did was he changed the mood of the film. So the first one was more of a sci-fi slasher. This one is more of a sci-fi family affair, centering around the T-800 Arnold Schwarzenegger's character, along with Sarah and her son John. And it was kind of a family sci-fi movie. The T-800 was akin to the Tin Man receiving a heart, as he understands how to protect, care for, and look after John. And he learns John's values of life, which I'll get to in a moment here. Cameron had a writing partner, William Wisher, and he's actually an extra in the movie. You see him right above my head holding the camera, facing Arnold Schwarzenegger in the jean jacket. That's actually him. And he wrote the first half of the script while James Cameron wrote the last half. And what they would do is they'd meet at James Cameron's house and they would kind of spitball everything and piece it all together. They did this over the course of about 4 weeks. There were many concepts and pages removed out of the original draft. For instance, there was a subplot involving Dyson that showed more of how he developed what would become Skynet. There was also a camp of survivalists that were helping Sarah that were going to get massacred, and that got written out of the script. Cameron did not consider the budget while writing, but he had to cut some elaborate scenes, including a 9-minute opening that showed the time travel machine being used in 2029, which I thought that would have been awesome to really see that. You do see some of the future, but not all of that. Wisher and Cameron also frequently conferred with ILM, which is George Lucas's company, for special effects, and they did all the amazing effects on this movie. So as they were writing, some of the most interesting aspects of this film come out. So the main character that survives the first Terminator movie and is the main character in this one is Sarah Connor. And so they had to understand and watch the first movie again to really get a feel for, okay, she has a knowledge of the future, which is going to set her apart. But she's also got to be able to develop her son into this military figure. So she's going to have to learn how to be a survivalist, learn how to use all these weapons, learn how to do all these things. So basically what they had to do was they had to have her associate with survivalists and become very self-sufficient. She was also written to have become emotionally cold because she had to be very strict, very disciplined so that she could raise her son to be this hero. The thing about that, though, is it kind of changed her personality to where she was becoming the Terminator machine that they were trying to get away from. And it really shows up when she goes after Dyson. So it's a very interesting psychological game with Sarah's character that they wrote for this. And I thought it was brilliant. It came across really genuine and really interesting because she knows the future and she is just trying to prevent it because she's having all kinds of crazy dreams about Judgment Day. So that really evolved her character and made Linda Hamilton really interesting to watch in this movie. And Linda Hamilton will get into what she went through to get ready for this movie, but she did a fantastic job. Her son, John Connor, was interesting. Instead of the story starting with Sarah, it's starting with John, and you see him and his foster parents and how he didn't get along with them and how he disobeys them. This was done to increase some of the tension around John, and it was inspired by a Sting song called Russians. Now, I don't fully get the analogy here, but this is what James Cameron said. He recalled, I remember sitting there once when he was struck by the lyrics, I hope the Russians love their children too. And I thought the idea of nuclear war is so anti-ethical to life itself. And that's where John came from. I get the song, I get the song, but I didn't quite understand that. But I think where Jim Cameron is coming from is the fact that both sides have families, both sides are probably value lives and want to save their homeland and their people. And so John's character is kind of someone that is trying to preserve life. And the way that he does that is he tells the Terminator that he can't kill anybody. And so that's why the Terminator is hitting people in the legs and doing stuff that will not cause anybody to die. You get the line, he'll live, which I thought was funny. So I guess that's where it's coming from. I don't know how it really relates as well to Sting's song. It's interesting. That's a good song, but, the mind of a genius, I guess. With Arnold Schwarzenegger, he initially struggled with portions of the script, once asking what is polyalloy, because he didn't fully understand the metal that was used for his character. He also expressed concerns about the character's non-lethal depiction which conflicted with his action hero persona and portrayal of the character, which I thought was interesting. Cameron basically explained that he wanted to defy audience expectations, and Schwarzenegger was okay with that, apparently telling him, just make me look cool. So, indeed, he did make him look cool. So, let's get more into it and talk a little bit more about the cast and what they went through filming this movie. So, Arnold Schwarzenegger, ever since the first Terminator movie, right up to this film, was always asked by fans and people around, when are you going to make another Terminator movie? You were so great in that movie. When's the next one coming? And he basically was saying, I don't know. It depends on James Cameron. James Cameron's doing The Abyss and Aliens. And it took a while. It was, roughly 6 or 7 years in between these two movies. But when he did get the script and agreed to do the movie, he was interested in how the character evolved to a more complex and sympathetic character than in the previous film. He wasn't just this cold killer. He actually had to kind of evolve and basically understand. So a lot of what Arnold went through is just learning how to do that, and he had to portray a fearless and emotionless machine that develops kind of an understanding. So he trained extensively with his stunt coordinator, Joel Kramer, to remain unaffected by fire and explosions around him, and he earned about 12 to 15 million for this involvement. The other thing they did a lot with him on was, if you look at a lot of his makeup, he spent a lot of time in the makeup chair. They designed some great special effects with him, some very practical effects, and he did a lot of that different stuff with different aspects of the metal, and different areas of his face were changed for several scenes. It's really cool, and Arnold did a great job with doing that. I can't imagine how much time he probably spent in the makeup chair getting all those prosthetics and all the different things done, the molds of his face, all that. I can't imagine how long that probably took, that process back at that time, because it was very much a hands-on thing. You actually had to do plaster and some other stuff. So Linda Hamilton got buff for this. Oh my goodness. So before Linda agreed to do this, the studio wanted to recast her, but James Cameron said, no, I don't want to do that. They did try to, work around her, but really you couldn't do the film without her because a lot of the story is still hers. So negotiations were formed, and basically they concluded promptly after Cameron informed the studio that the script would not be finished until he knew Hamilton was in it. So Hamilton received roughly $1 million. She probably deserved a lot more. She described it as quite a bit more than her earnings for Terminator, but was disappointed that her disparity in pay between hers and Schwarzenegger's. I felt she should have probably gotten more. He got like 12 to 15 million. She should have gotten a lot more than 1 million. Hamilton requested that Sarah exhibit a crazy demeanor, explaining that after years of living with impending doom of humanity, she believed Sarah would have transformed into an untamed entity, a warrior combined with a psychologically unstable woman, which is interesting. And, part of that also is the development with her character that I already talked about. Part of it is her kind of becoming the Terminator, but also realizing that the T-800 would become a better parent and a suitable protector for her son, which is interesting because she's learning to trust something that tried to kill her in the last movie. That's an unusual twist, and if you think about it psychologically, that's got to be difficult to really think about and perform. Cameron considered giving the character a facial scar, but determined that applying it daily would be difficult. Hamilton undertook extensive preparation for her role. So when I say she was a workout warrior, she was. She was working with a personal trainer 3 hours a day, 6 days a week, and maintaining a strict low-fat diet, losing about 12 pounds of body weight. She also received judo and military training with former Israeli commando Uziel Gal. Between training, filming, and spending time with her infant son, Dalton, Hamilton averaged only 4 hours of sleep per day. She described her experience as sheer hell, but enjoyed showing off her new physique. Hamilton's twin sister Leslie was also cast in scenes where two versions of Sarah appear on screen simultaneously. So kudos to her. She looks fantastic in the movie. She's a badass in this movie. I love the way Linda Hamilton plays Sarah Connor. Can't imagine anybody else in her role. She's just fantastic. The newcomer to this was Robert Patrick. And his story is a little bit interesting. I didn't have all the details of it, but apparently he was a struggling actor who was living in his car. And he was one of several actors that was trying out for the role. He was in his late 20s and considered for the T-1000. Cameron wanted the actor to resemble a newly recruited police officer to contrast with Arnold's big physique. According to Cameron, if the T-800 series is kind of a human Panzer tank, the T-1000 series is a Porsche, which I think is interesting. Casting director Molly Finn believed Patrick had the intense presence they wanted. Patrick auditioned by acting like an emotionless hunter and later participated in screen tests to judge the way lighting worked for his skin and his eyes. So when he got the part, he drew inspiration from Schwarzenegger's performance in the previous movie, and then he observed hunting creatures, reptiles, insects, cats, and sharks. So studying predators really helped him become a badass machine. Patrick's facial expressions were based on those of an eagle, kept its head tilted down to imply constant forward movement. He also employed a mixture of military posture with martial arts to express a fluid motion that differed from the T-800's rigid movement. So when you see him, he's very sleek. He's very calculated. Robert Patrick does a great job in this. He doesn't have a whole lot of lines, very, very few, but the way that he moves his body makes him menacing. The way that he expresses urgency and action in fluid motion really makes the character stand out. The other aspect of it is that he had to get into really peak physical shape, so he learned how to sprint without displaying heavy breathing and exhaustion, which, oh my gosh, that's hard to do just thinking about it. And he received specialized weapons training. He got to learn how to load and reload weapons and learn how to use Berettas and a whole bunch of other things, and also fire them without looking and eventually without blinking. So you're training an actor to not only how to use the gun, but you're teaching him how to do it without even reacting to it as his character would. So here are some interesting other facts about the T-1000 and some other actors or singers, as you're going to see, that they wanted for the role. Singer Billy Idol was originally cast for the role before seriously injuring his leg in a motorcycle crash. Let's just stop right there. Billy Idol is the T-1000. I don't know if I could see that, but it's just cool to think about. Cameron said Idol had been an interesting aesthetic, but in hindsight, he probably wouldn't have cast him. Singer Blackie Lawless of the rock band Wasp was also considered, but deemed too tall. That's just totally interesting. I love that. For John Connor's casting, Furlong got the role, and Cameron believed that the early candidates for the role were either overexposed in other media or came from an advertising background, which trained them to be happy and perky. Furlong had no acting experience and was discovered by Finn at the Boys and Girls Club in Pasadena. Cameron described Furlong as having a surliness and an intelligence, just a question of pulling it out. He was required to take acting lessons and learn Spanish and be able to ride a motorcycle and repair guns. Pretty cool for a kid. I mean, when I was a kid, that would have been cool to do. Learn how to repair guns and take acting lessons and ride motorcycles. I don't know about the learning Spanish, but the other three are pretty cool. Joe Morton believed that his casting as Miles Dyson had to do with Cameron's wanting a minority character to be integral to the changing of the world. He did a great job as Dyson. I think he's fantastic. He avoided interacting with the cast so that their on-screen relationships would seem believably distant, which I thought was a good thing for him to do to prepare the role. And the role of Dyson was reduced after the preferred casting choice, Denzel Washington, declined it because the role mainly required him to act scared. I don't know if I could see Denzel in this role, but Joe Morton really did a good job. He knocked it out of the park. I thought he was a great Dyson. He does fantastic, and that role is integral to this movie, and I think it's really cool to see what happens and how he reacts to the knowledge that his program, what he puts into place, is going to destroy the whole world. That's a huge, heavy burden to lay on somebody, and how he reacts to that is very, very cool. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the filming of this movie. This film was on a very, very, very tight timeline. They had to get the movie out by Memorial Day 1991, and they started filming in October of 1990. So that's a huge, tight window. Anyway, so it condensed pre-production way down. It almost pretty much cut it. So James Cameron had to spend several hours each day choreographing vehicle scenes with toy cars and trucks, filming the results, painting them, and getting them to the storyboard artists so they could get it up for the next shot for the next day. There was no time to properly test practical effects, so if the effects didn't work, they'd skip it and work around them, which is crazy because most movies you test the practical effects and make sure that you get them in order and make sure everything's working properly. As a result of working around all these effects, the storyboarding, and everything else, they had to film the movie out of sequence. And that was difficult for Arnold Schwarzenegger. And the reason for that is that his character has to convey subtle signs of becoming more human and more understanding of John and Sarah. And so if he's filming a scene that's at the beginning of the movie, he has to be colder. Towards the end, he has to be more understanding, and it really made it hard for him to do it. But Arnold was able to pick it up, and he gives a great performance. Cinematographer Adam Greenberg, who also worked on the Terminator, described the greater scope of the sequel as the most daunting project. He had been able to shout instructions to his crew on the original film. He used 187 walkie-talkies to conduct efforts over an expansive area in this film. So he had a lot more work on this one because it was a wider, more expansive production. The production was difficult in part because Cameron, who is known for his short temper and uncompromising dictatorial manner, made it hard on the crew because he's very precise. He wanted things done certain ways, and they were on a very, very quick budget. So the crew basically made t-shirts saying, "You can't scare me, I work for Jim Cameron," as a result of that. Schwarzenegger described him as a supportive but demanding taskmaster with fanaticism for physical and visual detail. So over the filming, it took about 101 days to film. Schwarzenegger and Hamilton were so frustrated by the high number of takes James Cameron asked them to do that they just got frustrated with it. I mean, I would be too if you had to do that. Cameron had them spend 5 days just in close-ups of Hamilton in the Dyson home as an example. I mean, just the sheer amount of stuff that he had them do and go through was just difficult, and he was relentless. The production filmed in many locations in and around L.A. The now destroyed Corral Bar was where the T-800 confronts a group of bikers. Basically, the corral was above ground, which allowed the scene to take place over different levels, and it helped it out. That area is also famous for the closeness of the Rodney King incident that happened in 1991 as well. And that actually happened a couple weeks after the filming. So very interesting, very kind of crazy. On one occasion, a woman who was oblivious to the ongoing filming walked into the bar when she asked Schwarzenegger, who was only wearing a pair of shorts, what he was doing. He replied, "It's a male stripper night." Executives suggested cutting the scene to save money, but Cameron and Schwarzenegger refused. That's an integral part of that filming. Terminator 2 had some great editors. They did amazing work on this. I think the editing of the film was fantastic. They really had to edit it very quickly. They described the complexity of scenes, such as the final battle between the Terminators, which required seamless combination of live action, practical effects, and CGI. After having to rush editing at the end of The Abyss, Cameron limited filming on Terminator 2 to 5 days a week so he could help edit the film on weekends from the start of filming. That's how tight it had to be on the editing and how big of an editing job. At the time, CGI was very new. So you still had a lot of practical effects, and you're adding a brand new technology. And you've got to mold it into a way where it doesn't look too fake. And I think they did a great job in this movie of doing that. So kudos to the editors of this film. They made it amazing. James Cameron, relentless with all his different shots, turned out great. And one of the main reasons why I love this film. And if you watch it for those aspects as well, you'll learn a little bit more about it. This is another film that I would suggest if you're learning how to make something or how to film something, that it's a good one to take notes on and to learn from. Let me talk about the deleted scenes really quick and wrap up kind of the end of the production and get into the music because it's all part of the end of the production. So there were several scenes that were deleted from this film. The cool thing, though, is if you buy the Blu-ray extended edition or the 4K, you can see some of these scenes that are put back in the film. So there's a scene where Kyle Reese appears to Sarah in a dream, and he encourages her to keep up the fight and to find John and to warn her that Judgment Day is still coming. There's a scene where Sarah's getting beaten in the hospital. There's a sad scene where the T-1000 kills the dog. Robert Patrick did not love that scene at all. He hated that. I'm glad it was cut out of the movie. I'm not a fan of that scene either. There's another scene where John teaches the T-800 to smile, which that scene's put back in, and it's pretty funny, especially Arnold's facial expression trying to do that. There's another scene where they discuss whether the T-800 fears death, which I think is kind of part of his whole character line, which is really cool. Another really, really awesome one is the T-1000 malfunctioning after being frozen in the steel mill. So it kind of blends in with the different things that it touches, and that's a cool effect. And there's another scene with the Dyson family that is interesting. It shows a little bit more about the humanity and what that family was like. There's also a scene that Arnold Schwarzenegger wanted to try and keep in the film, but they modified it. Basically, John and Sarah kind of pull out his CPU and they modify it to where he can learn more about humanity. And Sarah still attempts to destroy the CPU, but John stops her. Well, they kind of modified that to where you see her trying to destroy it and John stops her, and they imply that the T-800 already has the ability to learn and do that. And the final scene was an alternate 2029 where Sarah narrates that Skynet never was created, and John was a U.S. Senator playing with his daughter on a playground in Washington, D.C. I thought that was cool. That's a great idea. But Cameron decided to change it to where they're looking at the road ahead. And it actually kind of sets up another Terminator movie, which it did. The production ran all the way up until 2 days before the film's theatrical release. Crews were working 24-hour shifts and slept on site. It was crazy. And some of the effects that they were trying to finish were last minute. So this film, Memorial Day was when it got done, pretty much. It's kind of crazy, but that's how tight it was, how quickly they had to get it out because they had this deadline of Memorial Day. And when it came out, it was amazing. I think everybody went to go see this movie. It was fantastic. Let's get into music real quick. So the composer Brad Fiedel returned for Terminator 2. He was the composer on the first one. And I thought his theme on the first Terminator 2 was fantastic. The problem that he had is most composers get the full film, the full footage, and have like a month or two before the film comes out to compose the music for it. He didn't have that kind of time. He was in a rush too. So he had to do all kinds of different things to make the music work. So what he did was he used more of an ambient music. The score had to accompany on-screen action. And Fiedel and Cameron wanted the music tone to be warmer due to the focus on a nobler Terminator and a young John. So Fiedel experimented with sounds and shared them with Cameron for feedback. Gosh, Cameron probably never slept on this movie because he was involved with the editing. He was involved with the filming. He was involved with the music. I mean, wow, he put his heart and soul in this film. So the Terminator score had mainly used oscillators and synthesizers. Fiedel recorded real instruments and modified their sounds. He developed a library of sounds for characters such as the T-1000, whose theme was created by sampling brass instrument players warming up and improvising. So what he would tell these brass players is, hey, pretend you're in an insane asylum and you're a bedlam of instruments. And he would slow down the results and sample at a lower pitch, describing it as artificial intelligent monks chanting. Which is kind of cool. Cameron considered the atonal sound too avant-garde, to which Fiedel replied, you're creating something that people have never seen before, and the score ought to be something that somebody's never heard before, which is kind of cool. TriStar, which was helping to produce and release the film, asked Schwarzenegger to arrange a tie-in music video and theme song for the film. One of the popular bands at the time was Guns N' Roses. They had several hit songs, and basically Arnold wanted to work with them, and he got them to let him use You Could Be Mine from Use Your Illusion 2. And he was also in the music video, which you'll see some of the pictures here for him. And it was basically Arnold's the T-800 going after Guns N' Roses, which is kind of cool. It was directed by Stan Winston, and it was pretty awesome. Robert Patrick also wanted to try and get one of the bands that he knew about, Nine Inch Nails, and their song Head Like a Hole, but he was unsuccessful. His brother actually was a tour guitarist for that band. Wisher, the writing partner of James Cameron, suggested Bad to the Bone. Cameron didn't like it, but then Wisher said that Cameron had suggested that early on when they were writing, and then Cameron remembered that, and that's why Bad to the Bone is in that one scene, which we'll talk about soon. And Dwight Yoakam's Guitars Cadillacs was also featured in the film. The soundtrack to this movie is amazing. The score is fantastic. It all fits in to make this movie just a fantastic film. Let's talk about our favorite scenes.
I need your clothes, your boots, and...
I'm going to kind of do these scenes in movie order. There's so many great scenes in this film. It's hard to choose just 5, but I'm going to give you some of my favorite ones. So the T-800 going into the biker bar. The cool thing about it is I love how you see him use the infrared from the first film in this scene. I thought it was so cool. And then he basically fights a gang of bikers in the bar. One comes at him with a knife. Another one comes at a pull cue. Another one pulls a gun on him. and he's just beating the crap out of these guys, and he takes the guys' clothes, his boots, his motorcycle, and it tops it off with him getting on the bike and playing bad to the bone. The other cool thing is the guy tries to stop him, and he just grabs a gun and his sunglasses. I thought it was so cool. It's a great introduction to the T-800 in this film, and it's one of my favorite overall scenes in the movie. Really awesome.
Come with me if you want to live.
My next favorite scene in this is Sarah's escape from the mental institution. I like how she basically uses like I think it's a paperclip to uncover her bonds and gets out of the room, and then just goes all off on all the guards, and eventually gets a needle and holds it to the one guy's neck. They open everything up. She gets out. She's running away, and then she runs into the T-800 and is just terrified. That scene is great, where she sees the T-800 and she just falls and just starts running, takes off the opposite direction. It's her greatest fear come true, and the T-800 is there actually to protect her, and John's with them, and it's just a great scene. And then we see the T-1000 come in, and this is so cool because he just walks right through the iron bar doors. That was a very cool effect, and kind of a funny situation where his gun gets stuck in between the bars, which I thought was hilarious. But the fact that he's coming after him, and then Arnold shoots him so many times with the shotgun, and you see it kind of here, and it phases in, but not all the way. And they get in the elevator and they close it, only to have him make his arms go like this and kind of just open it up. I mean, it is so cool how they do that. And then they're able to get away, get to the car, and the Terminator is still coming after him, the car chase scene. And it's to the point where he's running and he jumps onto the back of the car, and they're able to knock him off of the back of the car. And there's one little metal piece on the car, and John kind of throws it down. And then you see the T-1000 walk up to that piece, and it just becomes part of his foot, which I thought was really cool. Very cool scene. A lot of great effects in this.
We got Skynet by the balls now, don't we? Come on, let's
Destroying
look.
the lab was incredible. They get in there. And they're confirmed that there is a CPU and a metal arm that they recovered, and Sarah's really, really hysterical about all that because she swore up and down that those parts were there, and this would have proved her story was correct. You could see the disappointment in her, but they realize they have to destroy that, and they have to destroy any traces of what they learned from this futuristic technology. So they're doing that, and meanwhile the cops are coming in, and Arnold has to get rid of them without killing them. So he gets a Gatling gun. The gun you see right up here. And he blows away cars. He hits some of the cops, but doesn't kill them. The cool thing is you see his infrared. It says casualty 0. It's really cool. Just a great scene. Then they try and gas him, and he's able to walk through there and lift off the gas mask and get Sarah and John out of there. Dyson realizes that he has to stay behind in order to blow it up, and he'd gotten shot by the cops, and so he makes the ultimate sacrifice in order to prevent this awful future from happening. And he does a great job. You kind of feel sorry for him. He realizes that, it was him that caused this awful future, and if he can prevent it somehow, he's going to do that. And he makes the ultimate sacrifice, which is, really noble for his character. I think that's an interesting character arc to him that I don't think enough people discuss with this film. I thought it was really cool, and the way they did it, and you see it blown up at the end with the helicopter scene coming up.
Get out.
I remember seeing the helicopter scene in the movie, and I was totally blown away. It's so cool how the T-1000 enters the helicopter. You see the famous line, "Get out." And then he takes off after the police cruiser, and it's just a phenomenal scene where this helicopter is dodging traffic and it's getting close to everything, and Sarah's trying to shoot at it while keeping John down and having him reload. And the T-1000 gets a machine gun and starts shooting out of the helicopter while maintaining that. And the other cool thing that you see is that he develops a third arm that's holding the stick, that's doing something else and shooting at the same time. Way too cool. I love the sequence. I love the events that happen in this part of the movie. I think it's a really cool effect, really cool chase scene. They did a great job, and they made it kind of at night when it's dark. That made it even more enjoyable, even more intense and scary. And that's what I loved about this movie, is just the intensity of it. And it kind of wraps up with the liquid nitrogen truck spilling over on the T-1000, and we get to our last scene coming up.
Call John.
The grand finale of them all is the factory scene, and this is awesome. You think the T-8000 might be defeated with the liquid nitrogen, but oh no. When the liquid nitrogen is not fully frozen and heats up, he comes back. And he's chasing them. He does find Sarah and imitates her. He does have a couple battles with the T-8000 where he pretty much shuts it down and chops his arm off. And then at the very end, he's pretty much got him. And one of my favorite scenes is the scene depicted in this picture right over here where he's like, I thought it was hilarious and awesome. And then, of course, Arnold, for the win, shoots him, kills him. They knock him into the pit. And the cool thing about him going in the molten lava pit is you kind of see some of the people that he's been. That's so cool. And then, obviously, the ending with Arnold sacrificed, realizing that he had to die too because you couldn't let anybody use his body for futuristic technology either. So great ending to a great film. What are your favorite scenes from Terminator 2? What do you like about this movie? What's the next movie that I should cover? Let me know in the comments. Let's have a good discussion. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.